an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 2, Episode 12, Rashard and Wallace Go to White Castle. In this episode, oh man, doing the right thing really does come with a price, most of the time. And I have to tell you guys, I was gratified that things with Wallace and Rashard seemed to wrap up this episode, but I'm not sure that's true, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. We'll see what happens. Also, Jackie's back! Yay! Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Huge thanks to Nancy for commissioning this episode. I know that the Veronica Mars fans have been frustrated because there have been long breaks between episodes lately. My apologies. I have opened the booking process up to a 3-month window instead of just 2 now. So there's a lot more slots available in September and October at this point. But yeah, I just wanted to it was tough with it getting booked up so fast. So anyway, thank you guys for bearing with me as it took so long to get to this episode. The last one was on May 31st. So it has been a month and a half. And I was a little bit worried starting this episode. I was thinking, I'm going to watch it, but I may have to go back and refresh myself on some things. But I don't think I did. I think I'm good. This episode, okay, I'm going to just talk about Felix right out of the gate, which, I mean, that's just kind of predictable at this point now because I heart Felix. Everybody, I have a confession to make, and I should have said this the last time, but I didn't. And now I feel like it's going to sound like I'm just saying, oh, I saw this coming, when I totally didn't. And I'm not even trying to say I saw this coming. But I am trying to say things didn't look great for Felix. And I wondered if there wasn't something like this going on. The episode where he is trying to sort of let everybody know that he's aware some shit was going on. And I'm trying to remember which episode that even was. But he tries to get confrontational and let everybody know that he's, like, on to something. And Weevil, yes, Agnes, I'm talking about his dead friend. R.I.P. Felix. Sorry, buddy. But yeah, Weevil makes a big show about loyalty and talking about how he's going to, that he feels like somebody else is trying to play him and like accusing people or like implying things. And as somebody who has started to see, like, I've watched and read a lot more about not just organized crime, but like socially the hierarchy that exists within a lot of institutions and social circles and whatnot. I have to say that when Weevil had his last kind of powwow with his guys, it felt like he was not in control. And there was no show of power from him. There was nothing to sort of indicate that he had the means to actually follow through on a threat, or what's the word I want? There was just no consequences that I could see that he was really presenting as a possibility. And I think this is where the show has to make a choice. They have been trying to make Weevil somebody that we kind of like, despite him being like a gangster. And you cannot do that you can't be a gangster without doing some despicable shit. That's just facts. The whole thing revolves around doing shady and illegal stuff. And he's out here, not wanting to, for them to be dealing certain types of drugs. He's out here apparently like not wanting to kill anybody. I'm sorry, man, but like the way that they had this moment with him go down this episode, even the guy's like, well, I guess I'll just say adios and leave it at that. That should mean that they're killing him. And the show doesn't want Weevil to die. And I really do get that. But it's more than just Weevil. It's about the show not wanting Weevil to be involved in a crew of people that are willing to kill. And it feels like really pussyfooting around the character that they have created. They want Weevil to be this intimidating dude who's involved in all kinds of underground activity, but they don't want him to be a bad guy. And, you like, if you've done a good enough job with a character, even if he is kind of a bad guy, we can still root for him. What I think that they're worried about is that Veronica does stumble on information or suss things out all the time. And I think that the writers are worried. There's no way Weevil could kill somebody or be involved in a crew that was out here killing people and not actually try and turn them in or say anything or work with them, because she does rely on Weevil sometimes for him to back her up on things. So I think the show is struggling with how they can continue to make use of Weevil as a character, to make use of his thugs being intimidating and being able to pull certain things off, and still have him be a viable ally for Veronica. And I understand that quandary, but I also feel like if we're going to get down to it, when you do what Veronica does, and especially as an adult, like, eventually getting into her own business, which I assume is what like the new season that's coming out is about, you have to pal up with people who you don't always approve of. And I don't know. I just don't really know how to address what I feel like the show is trying. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too a little bit. And they're trying to have this like intense standoff with a crew of people that definitely should have killed Weevil this episode. And instead, not only did they just beat the hell out of him, but he's on the school bus going back to high school in the morning. And it feels really, really weird by that point that he is even bothering. Does anybody else feel this? Like, does anybody else sort of see that, like, Weevil would definitely have dropped out by now? Like, what's he trying to do? Because when you are in this sort of world, graduating isn't exactly on the top list of priorities. It's not like that's going to help you. So I just feel like they want Weevil to really be this like symbol of the underbelly and the people of color and the impoverished and marginalized, but they don't want to have him be anything but a mostly moral person. And I just can't get behind that entirely. Because I feel like you can be, and this will be really controversial, I feel like you can be a mostly moral person in your way, or at least have a code, as they say, and still be a bad person, right? Like, so I feel like they kind of need to lean into that. They need to decide that's who Weevil's going to be, and have him be a little bit more ruthless, and have the stakes for his gang be a lot higher. They're saying he promised his grandma. All right, I guess that's a convenient way to just force him into continuing to go. So what goes on this episode is he is starting to put together. He goes and sees, it's Molly Fitzpatrick is her name, right? I think. And she was dating Felix secretly and tries to deny it. And he shows her the pictures and is like, can we just skip this part, please? And I found it really, like, this girl, I hope that she doesn't come up again in the show because she is a really bad actress. But she finally tells him that, like, the way that she actually met Felix was at church, St. Mary's. Which I love that you can just have a fake church in literally any piece of fiction and just name it St. Mary's and it's totally fine. Because there's, like, I mean, that's just such a generic name, but it's totally, it's one of those things that you kind of want to roll your eyes like, oh, John Smith, really? But, like, I have been to more than one St. Mary's. So, yes. And her brother is a priest at the church. And it's like the one dude who's sort of a stand-up guy, allegedly. But he used to be really involved in the family business. So Weevil is convinced that the drugs are being laundered, I guess, for lack of a better word. They're being passed off in the church. And that her brother, the priest, is doing it. Well, it's kind of an amusing scene because he goes to talk to Logan about this, and Logan is all, like, caught up in playing this video game and making this big show of really just not caring about what Weevil's saying. And it's super weird because then later when he's talking to Veronica, he gets really intense about the fact that she's not taking this seriously. And I just wanted to be like, Logan, did you see yourself, like, earlier this episode, dude? You didn't seem to even be listening, and your shit is on the line just as much. And I really appreciated Weevil just getting up and ripping out the controller or the power for Logan's video game. Like, because I don't know how many of you, like, we all have our pet peeves, but there is nothing that gets to me quite as much as trying to have a conversation with somebody who is clearly focused on something else. It irritates me so much. This happens in real life. Like, Owen is really bad about being on his phone and only half hearing me, and I have to stop talking and just stare at him until he fucking looks up and realizes that I stopped talking a couple minutes ago and he didn't notice because that's how distracted he is. And, you know, even on podcasts, there are times where I can tell whoever I'm hosting with is in the middle of doing something else and is not hearing what I'm saying. And I just get so irritated. And this moment of him ripping out the cord of the game was very cathartic. I was like, I wish I could do that sometimes. I wish I could just take Owen's phone out of his hand and just, like, chuck it against a wall sometimes. But he explains everything to Logan, and precious Logan is just like, yeah, but aren't priests supposed to be good guys? And I'm like, Logan, sweetie, I don't know how to tell you this, babe, but no. Like, they're people, and people are in general a variety of things. And priests are going to also be a variety of things. And, you know, in some cases, I think that if you're in the position that a priest is in, you're going to be more tempted to take advantage of that because you are in a position of social power within a very specific community, and you are going to be seen as a paragon of virtue or defended as such, even if you are not worthy of that. And even if your behavior seems to very clearly countermand those ideals. And that, so I'm not trying to say priests are bad people. I'm saying anybody that's in that sort of position is going to have a lot more temptation to abuse it than the average person will. And his precious little baby innocence about this whole thing is really weird to me. It makes sense. Like, you know, he's never been to a church. Like, Weevil straight up asks him, have you ever been to a Catholic church? And he's like, just stares at him. And in that respect, I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? You haven't had a lot of exposure to religion, I don't feel like. So you're just kind of probably going with the generalities of what you've heard. But yeah, so they go to Veronica and ask her to plant a bug in a confessional booth, which she decides is going too far. Guys, can we talk about that and why that's where Veronica draws the line? Because that feels really strange to me. I don't understand how this bitch can fucking bug a school counselor's office and listen to the most intimate private details of people's lives that they are telling in confidence to a therapist or a counselor, and then try and act like she's too good to plant a bug in a confessional booth. Girl, you're not fucking fooling nobody. You have no fucking moral high ground here, and you need to get that other leg back to stand on, because you haven't got one. Like, I don't know what she thinks she's saying here, and I know that I think it's only Duncan who was aware that she did that. I don't know if Logan ever found out or if Weevil ever found out that she had done that. But either way, we as viewers know that. And I don't know if the writers just hoped we'd forget, or if they just expected us to kind of respect the fact that that was one line that she wasn't willing to cross for whatever reason. But in my mind, there is absolutely no difference between a confessional booth and a therapist's office. Like, you don't get to fucking act like this one's too far, but the other is fine. And if anything, I think the counselor's office was worse, because these were all people that trusted Veronica and that were friends of hers or people she knew, versus a confessional booth that's going to be frequented by a bunch of folks that she has no idea about. So she has a lot more personal, vested interest in what was going on in the counselor's office, quite outside of her friend's murder, which it was supposed to be about. I feel like there's a feeling there of like, it's not exactly that I think Veronica would take advantage of what she heard in the counselor's office. It's more that I have an idea in my mind that as a teenager, there are certain things that you're going to hear if you bug a counselor's office that I think the average teenager would have a really hard time not turning to their advantage, or maybe even accidentally spilling, because you know what happens when you find out something and then some time passes and you don't even remember where you heard it or how you found it out. So I could see her accidentally blurting something really private out, or saying something that she was under the impression everybody knew, or thought that the person had told her themselves and they didn't. I just feel like it's a lot more dangerous. So this reticence that she has about the confessional booth, especially considering we have seen no evidence of her being religious at all or concerned about this, feels so manufactured and strange to me. And then they have this whole thing with her going and praying for forgiveness in front of Mary's statue, hey, I'm sorry about this, before she goes and does it. And I'm just the show, I think, is trying to just sidestep that she did something that I still have not totally forgiven her for last episode. It's just, I am an open person, and most of what I talk about in my therapy sessions is shit that I've even talked about on the podcast. So for me, I have even less to hide than the average person, and I would still be disgusted if I found out somebody was doing this. So I can't imagine with people who are a lot more private than me how they would feel. And yeah. So, but anyway, she agrees to do a camera because she's willing to film who's going in and out and what happens, which is, in my opinion, better than actually doing just sound, because you're not going to, I don't feel like you're going into a confessional booth and the priest is just going to be like, hey, you got the stuff? I think that the camera in the end winds up being the better option anyway. So she puts that in there and she's watching the footage, and she had gone in and gotten caught up because the priest, it turns out, was in there as she was mumbling to herself about how she was definitely going to hell. Again, I'm definitely going to hell, while she's putting this camera in a confessional booth. Why is this the thing, girl? Why? But anyway, it leads to the priest talking to her and asking her about why she feels this way. And she talks about doing things that are improper because she knows that there are folks out there who are bad people and she wants them to be caught and to be punished. And he quotes to her, "The vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Therefore, when your enemy is thirsty, when he is hungry, feed him and let him drink." And I have to admit, I don't know if I'm alone in this. I never heard that second part before. Anytime anybody talks about vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, it's somebody who is taking vengeance themselves. Even the quote, honestly, that they're using to back up what they're about to do, it turns out means like the opposite of what they're saying. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, means be nice to everybody and I'll deal with it later. You don't have to pass judgment or do this at all. It's not your purview. So I am really shook at the fact that this is like, I, as somebody who is not religious, I was brought up in a religious enough household that I know most quotes from the Bible and am aware of their context. And this is one that I can't believe I didn't know the full quote. Like, it... Y'all, you know what I'm talking about, guys? Like, this is just one of those moments where you're just like, I can't believe that this has been misused for my entire life, and I never knew. I'm 34 years old, just finding this out. Like, all right, I'm going to read the New International Version, because there's a page that gives you every single translation. And I love it so much. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. Like I said, the fucking opposite. Like, I did not care for that revelation. I felt like, are you kidding me? So... Anyway, I just got so distracted by that, y'all. I couldn't believe it when he kept talking. I was like, what? So anyway, she is really still sure that because this priest doesn't look like a priest, and I'm really, when people say that, you know that it's somebody who is not in the church or who does not go to church often, because the number of priests that I have seen that were like young and hot or really hipstery. There was a priest from my mother's church when she was living in Colorado who had like a long ponytail down to his waist and a beard, and he had like gauges in his ears. And there is just, you know, when you looked at him, if he were in street clothes, priest is certainly not the thing that would pop into your head. So I'm really expecting this guy to look even more thuggish than he does. And really the only thing about him is that he's he's young and he's got like a kind of jacked frame, and that's it. And not even really that, not even so much. But she's feeling pretty certain that this guy is actually guilty before she even starts. And it's an interesting thing to me that she has this like preconception so down that there is so little doubt in her mind right away. And it's fine. I don't really have a problem with her like deciding ahead that she thinks this guy is guilty, because we all do that, you know, and I've certainly done it within these episodes. I mean, Veronica does it too. We'll have the big reveal where it turns out, oh, it's not somebody that we thought. And that's what happens here, is that she's pretty certain that this is the way that it has to go. And when she watches the video, it is a silent, secret handoff that Father, and his name is Father Patrick Fitzpatrick, which just seems really mean, but there it is. But they are hiding it in the confessional booth, and then the other is going in right after and grabbing it out. And it turns out that the one that takes the drugs is Thumper from Weevil's crew. So this leads to the confrontation where Weevil tries to pin Thumper down in front of everybody. And I am just super duper curious what he thought he was gonna do about this. What did Weevil intend when he decided that he was going to, like, publicly out this dude? I don't know. Was he just going to beat the shit out of him? Like Thumper and the crew does to him in the end? I don't know. Like, you could exile a guy, but then you got a guy with a fucking axe to grind just roaming around, not attached to any crew, who's already demonstrated that he's willing to work for the Fitzpatricks in some capacity. So I don't really know what Weevil was intending. And I'm realizing that, like, the book that he takes, I think it's meant to be a Bible, or it could be like a hymn book or a prayer book or something. Is it the priest that slides it to him? Because I had seen that and thought that it was them, like, trading it under the, like, off to the side. It is, right? Like, it's hard for me to tell because they go through that video pretty quick, but it looks like he puts it down, right? And then he comes in and just takes it off of the side. Yeah, okay. I'm watching it again right now just to make sure, because I was like, suddenly like, wait, what if the priest was involved? But yeah, it doesn't seem that way. And when he talks to Veronica about, like, her wanting to get revenge on people eventually, he makes it sound like he totally knows what she's talking about, and that he himself wants bad people to get what's coming to them sometimes. So it feels like he's very sincere in that he looks at his own family, I get the feeling, and kind of wants them to fucking pay a little bit, because it's just, I mean, I'm sure if you are watching your family do the kinds of things that, see, I'm about to say, do the kinds of things that gangsters like this have to do. But then we get back to the PCHers who don't seem to do those things. The Fitzpatricks are being set up as the kind of gang that the PCHers should also be. But they're being presented as just a lot more, like, vicious and cruel and violent and dangerous. But anyway, I've said enough about that. But yeah, he has, so I'm kind of wondering if he won't wind up being an ally a little bit later, if there's not something that's going to work out there, but he may not play into this anymore at all. Who knows? I could see them thwarting what's going on with the handoffs by alerting him to the fact that they're happening in the confessional booth, because I'm not sure that he knows that that's what's going on. He could be somebody who's just like hoping against hope that his family, who's involved in bad shit, that the fact that they're coming in for confession at all is like a good sign, you know? But that's the thing about Catholicism that's so tricky, is that you can get forgiven for anything. And if you are committing crimes and hurting people, and then you go into the confessional booth and tell a priest everything, supposedly you're good. So I could understand feeling hopeful, but also it feels like a complete loophole to me, you know? But, you know, that's one of the big questions about Catholicism in general. So I can't really blame him for not seeing that or wanting to see it or whatever. So in the end, we have the confrontation. And when Weevil says that there's a traitor amongst us and he says something about Thumper, they have a moment of it seeming like Thumper's pretty nervous about how obvious it is that Weevil is pinpointing him. And then he just straight up says, "Is this such a big deal, selling dope to white boys? We don't think so." And he says, "We? What do you mean?" And Thumper just raises his arms and says, "We." And he tries to be like, The Fitzpatricks made Felix disappear, and now you want to go work for them? Let me make sure I got this straight. You have a problem with us working with our enemies, Thumper jumps in. Then maybe you can tell us what you were doing meeting at the Neptune Grand with Logan Eccles. I do not understand, you guys, why he doesn't tell them that he was talking to Logan because he knows that there's a traitor. Right? Like, why doesn't... They're all acting like Logan's the one who stabbed our friend. He is aware it's the Fitzpatricks, actually. I understand them seeing Logan as the enemy, but Weevil doesn't even attempt to explain himself here. He just clams up and looks like, wow, you really got me, and looks at the ground. And has this like extremely guilty expression on his face. Hector's cousin works maintenance there. He saw you all buddy-buddy with the piece of trash who killed Felix. Did you not hear him just say the Fitzpatricks are the ones who got Felix? And again, I don't expect even for the PCHers to listen to him, but I expect Weevil to attempt to defend himself and explain and be like, guys, I know that it wasn't him, and Thumper's working with the people who did do it, if he didn't do it himself. So, but he doesn't just say it. He just stands there and lets them throw all these accusations at him and get this, like, expression on his face. And fucking Thumper says, and you're selling out your brothers, and continues to not say anything in his defense. Come on. Like, and the premise is supposed to be here that this is what it took for the whole crew to turn on Weevil. They just had to find out that he was sitting and talking with Logan, and that was enough for all of them to mutiny and decide that he wasn't worth the time. It's weak. That's real weak to me. I don't know. Like, I wanted to believe that this was like a level 2 setup or something. But it just doesn't, like, the whole way this was handled and the way Weevil reacted and how little resistance he put up and how he doesn't even say until after everybody's gone to Thumper, you're the one who killed Felix, huh? He doesn't even say it until everybody is gone that I can't buy this at all. This whole, like, turn of events. It just doesn't ring true to me for who Weevil is and for everything that he has been trying to set up. And I'm just mad about it. It doesn't make sense, guys. Straight up. But anyway, that's what happens. And they basically, like, have him tied and, like, hooked up to a crane so that he's totally exposed and everybody can just come and punch the shit out of him. And then, like, leave him there. Again, them all beating the shit out of him just because he was talking to Logan. Like, what do they think is happening? They don't even present a real, like, theory. All Thumper says is working against your brothers. But he doesn't say what that is supposed to be. There isn't a fully formed hypothesis that they're working from, where we know you're in league with him and you're selling us out, or there's not enough. And yet they're all over here willing to kick the shit out of him. For what? Really? Like, no, I don't guess. No. So, finally, Thumper comes up to him, and he has a video of Weevil kicking the shit out of somebody. He tells him, and I don't even remember what it was. Like, he's showing him the night you nearly kicked Curly's head in. So I keep my mouth shut. Who's Curly, y'all? I don't remember this guy. Oh, and Nancy is saying, only if you're truly sorry and resolved to do better. Yeah, well, that's like the ideal, right? That's supposed to be how it works. we're talking about confession again. We're bouncing back a little bit. The guy who had Veronica's name and washed up on the beach. Oh, right. Thank you, Agnes. Yeah. And he's yeah. So the threat here is that he can go to the cops, show them this video, and they will believe that Weevil is the one who killed Curly. So this is a real, this isn't just, I have you assaulting somebody. This is, I have you assaulting somebody who turned up dead later. And that makes me feel like Thumper or one of the Fitzpatricks also killed Curly, that they set him up so that they had this perfect piece of blackmail. I hope that's true. But based on the fact that this all seems very slipshod to me and hung together in the loosest of ways, I don't buy that they actually planned this out that well. I think that this winds up being unrelated, but we'll see. So anyway, he goes to school the next day with a busted face and obviously some stung pride and is feeling a sort of way about it. And I don't know what I expect to happen next because I felt like it seemed that Weevil was losing control of his guys, that he was not exerting power. But I also didn't really know what the show wanted to make Weevil be capable of. The show of power that would have gotten everybody in line, I think, would be really hurting somebody in front of them that he thought was guilty. So, for example, if he were trying to run this the way that, hypothetically, I would run a crew if I were going to be really terrible, I would jump Thumper by myself, grab his ass up, probably torture him until he tells me what the fuck is going on, and then drag his battered ass in front of everybody and be like, this motherfucker killed Felix, this motherfucker working with the Fitzpatricks, this motherfucker told me everything, and this is what happens, and then pop him in the head. That's what you should do with somebody like this. You don't pull them out in the group with everybody else. He's trying to do something really dramatic here in a way that's like, oh, big reveal, shocker. But he shouldn't play it that way when he hasn't got any sort of leverage that we can see, right? So yeah, getting him alone and getting him to confess, that's the only way that this would make sense. But again, I'm trying to act like this is The Sopranos, this is not The Sopranos. So I feel like the show has made a bit of, painted itself into a corner a little bit with wanting to have a gangster character, but not wanting to have him be a gangster. So, all right, I'm going to bounce back and let's talk about Wallace. So Wallace had gone and told the truth to the reporter about the hit and run. Unsurprisingly, Rashard and his friends are saying that it was him who was driving the car that night, which, I mean, anybody could have seen coming. Poor Wallace didn't, because he really thinks Rashard is his friend. And he also, it's an interesting thing because, like, there's that whole, like, snitches get stitches culture that is very, very real. You know, like, that's a genuine, like, no matter how shitty a thing a person did, if you consider them to be a friend, you're not supposed to say anything. I do not subscribe to that. I feel like there are levels and layers to that, and layers of loyalty depending on who you're talking about. And I feel like there's just that to me is just kind of its own special kind of despicable, just deciding not to say anything. So in that respect, I really, of course, think that Wallace did the right thing. However, he seems shocked at Rashard's reaction to him telling the truth, and that surprised me. Like, Wallace, you've got to know that this guy is going to see this as the ultimate betrayal. If anything, I would have thought, if I were Rashard, that maybe Wallace was making a play and trying to blackmail me and get some money out of it. Like, yeah, I'm going to go to this reporter or something. But it just turns around on Wallace, and he is super convinced that Rashard's uncle is the one who is orchestrating this whole, like, false accusation, and that he is like Rashard himself would totally be willing to shoulder the responsibility if it weren't for his uncle corrupting his mind and making him over ambitious and, cold-hearted and whatever. And I wish I could see what kind of relationship Wallace had with Rashard that he would think that. Why would you think that's the kid hit a homeless man, paralyzed him, and then asked everyone to lie about it and just drove off? This is not a person who's concerned with right and wrong. This is a person who is solely concerned with their own future and saving their own ass. Those actions were like, and he's trying to act like, well, his uncle made him say that, oh, we hit a dog. Did he though? Because his uncle wasn't the one who drove the car away, Wallace. He didn't make that choice. It was just y'all. It wasn't until you got to the house and he talked to his uncle that his uncle came up with a story. But I would definitely interpret it as he got into a bad situation and then went to his uncle for advice on how to spin it. And that's not how Wallace sees this at all. He sees it as his, good-hearted friend being corrupted by his greedy, ambitious uncle. And it's sort of precious. Like, when Veronica is rightfully, obviously Rashard is in on this and will not help you, he's kind of, disgusted. And it's like, do you really think this about everybody, that they're all terrible people like this? And I'm like, Wallace, I love you, but what are you talking about, dude? Why would you even... What about this kid has suggested to you that he gives a shit? But anyway, so he gets accused of having been the one who was driving. And they have this, brainwave that there was a kid in the drive-thru at White Castle that they pulled into that same night that not only waited on them through the drive-thru and saw that Rashard was driving, but got Rashard's autograph. So he really knows who Rashard is, recognizes him, and will remember this interaction. Now, the thing here is that they're both so glad that they have this witness without thinking about the fact that the kid got Rashard's fucking, if he got his autograph, he's going to be willing to cooperate with Rashard and his uncle. Which it turns out is exactly true. This kid winds up disappearing. And I have to be honest, I thought this kid had been killed. This is where my mind goes. It turns out that he's just being kept out of the way so that the cops can't find him. But he has been put into a hotel. And the scene is so funny, you guys. Because this, I'm jumping ahead past the party. I'll get back to the party. But it is really, really funny to me because what they do is they don't explain who this kid is, and they don't show us the scene of him going through the drive-thru. So we have no context for who this goofy dude is that's jumping around in his underwear. He's trying to do a risky business thing with a button-up shirt and his socks and boxers, and he's playing House of Pain and drinking champagne out of the bottle and trying to party, but he's got two girls in the room with him who are not impressed. He's just trying to use the money that he's being given to shut up to impress them. He's doing this all on somebody else's tab, he says, apparently, and thinks that that's going to win them over, but obviously, just the three of them in this room, it is very awkward and not working out for him at all. I want to know what these girls are even doing here. Why did they agree to come up here? Did his uncle give these two girls to him? Is that what happened? Did he, convince them to go and, keep this kid company? That makes more sense than anything, I guess. But yeah, it is really, really funny, I thought, to be honest. So I'm going to jump back and then come back to this scene. But they wind up, because he's so convinced, Wallace is, that all he needs to do is talk to Rashard by himself without the uncle interfering. That he wants to, finagle a situation where he can get him alone. So there are these two girls that are, and this, I don't believe that these two girls were like, I was going to say hired by Veronica. I don't even know if that's the word I want, but whatever it is, Veronica got into the front seat of the limo that Rashard winds up getting into and is behaving as if she's his like handler and coordinator. And the limo driver seems to be unaware that this girl is totally unrelated to everything. And she orchestrates this like weird setup in a parking garage where Rashard is going to be penned in next to two other cars and won't be able to like get out the door and get out. And that way Wallace can talk to him through a window from another car safely without being, grabbed up, or who knows what they thought was going to happen. Unfortunately, Rashard's uncle is keeping an eye on him and sees him getting into the car with these two girls and immediately is just like, nope, which is kind of interesting because you would think a handler like this would be trying to keep this kid happy with women. Like you would be using that to sort of like lead him down the garden path, so to speak. But he's really like going long term with this whole thing. He's not intending to just like get this kid happy and use him for like a year. This is meant to last. So he sees these two girls and realizes like he's going to be alone in this car. And if these two girls are not reputable people and who are just out here for a payday, they could say anything happened. He could sleep with one of them and get one of them pregnant. All of these things like that could really potentially damage his future. And the way the guy talks about him to Rashard later is just like they just see money and yada, 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 and making it like these girls really are mercenary in a way that I have a hard time believing these two were. I mean, maybe, but it really feels to me like they're just they're fascinated by somebody who is very successful at such a young age, who is attractive, and who has money for the like entertainment of it, not necessarily like, oh, they're trying to like get in there for it. But I might not be giving them enough credit, because there are certainly a lot of people who are raised in very different ways than I was raised. And I would see somebody with money and I would not want to become their friend because they had money. That was never even something that entered my head. And I wasn't somebody who wanted to date a guy because he had a lot of money. If anything, when I found out a guy had a lot of money, it made me take a step back and realize that maybe I was not going to fit into that world very well. So I have a hard time understanding that mindset, and I do need to keep in mind that it exists. It's out there. But anyway, this like confrontation that they had planned out implodes completely because the uncle is there to intercept Wallace, and the poor fucking limo driver winds up getting in trouble because of Veronica's stunt, because she like played him. And I felt really bad for that guy. Like, he just was trying to do his job and didn't know that everything was being done really shadily behind his back. And I just hope that Rashard's uncle went easy on him once he realized that this guy had been duped. But I don't anticipate that, really. So the next time that Wallace tries to confront him is at a frat party. Because he's out here being courted, by different schools. So they're throwing a party to try and attract him, right? And it's really fun because when they get to the house, he stops and looks at the house and like looks at Veronica and says, "What frat did you say this was?" And I don't even remember which one it is that she says, but he recognizes it as being a black fraternity. And it's just like, sweetie, you are not going to fit in here. So she says that she will go and wait in the car. And I really I had no idea until I started to get more involved in Black communities and spaces and conversations, I was not aware how important the Greek community is to the Black community. Like, Black fraternities and sororities are a pretty big deal. And they can be, like, so competitive to get into that you're still trying to do it from grad school kind of thing. Like, that shit goes on. And I know a couple of Black women who are my age or only slightly younger that just got into Black sororities, and it has become their entire life. Like, they have just, the change that their social structure has undergone from joining this sorority is unbelievable. As somebody who is not involved in this at all, I had no idea that it was this big a deal. And I'm sure it's not always to everyone, but I didn't know that it could be like this when you're my age. You know, I always assumed that this is something you either get into college or you don't do at all. And I was just interested to see that being represented here in the way that it is. So he goes in there and he tries to corner Rashard and get him to be like, oh, you're right, you did the right thing, I was wrong. And not shocking to anybody, Rashard is just like, dude, you fucking snitched on me. First of all, I have worked really hard to get where I am, and I can't just let a mistake unravel that. And of course, Wallace is just like, a mistake? Like, you drank and drove, which is really stupid, and then you, like, fucking paralyzed a person. Yeah, it was a mistake. That doesn't mean that you just get to walk away from it and act like it didn't happen. And Rashard's like, you say. Apparently I do get to do that, so I don't really know what to tell you, but I'm definitely not going to back up your story. I don't know why you thought I would. That's not going to happen. We're not friends like that. You snitched. Clearly, I thought we were friends in a way that you don't. So I owe you absolutely nothing. Bye-bye. So Wallace is standing there and he's like kind of collecting himself because he's obviously a little fucked up over this. And when he goes back out into the party, there's Rashard sitting next to Jackie, whom earlier Jackie tried to talk to Wallace and be like, why didn't you return any of my messages? I've been trying to get in touch and you haven't responded to anything. And Wallace like rejected her kind of brutally. He was just like, because she said maybe the three of us can hang out, because she was trying to sort of, you know, couch the whole thing in, I'm not trying to get with you, your friend can come too. And then he says, I'm busy this weekend, but you two go ahead, knowing perfectly well these two girls do not like each other. And so we are definitely set up in this moment to think that Jackie is in with this other dude specifically to irritate Wallace. Like, you could see it as just being, oh, well, you know, I'm a free agent now and I'll go see who I want. But because we know Jackie well enough to know that she can be that kind of petty, it would not have surprised me one bit to find out that she looked into what was going on with Rashard, found out that Rashard was like on his way up in the world, and decided that not only was she going to be hitching her wagon to a rising star, but she was also going to really be poking a wound of a dude who ghosted her in a way that she is not used to and would find very unacceptable. So this little confrontation, like, and he tries to be like, stay away from this guy, and she tells him to fuck off. There's this whole like scene where Rashard like tells the bouncers that they should and keep in mind this is a frat party, but there's like bouncers here. There are these two huge dudes who he says party foul over here. This guy is messing with my special lady friend. And they come and literally pick Wallace up and put him in the fucking closet and lock him in there for a minute. Like, and just sit there with their chair against the door as he's in like timeout. And it is really funny to me. I mean, I expected them to just kick him out, and that's not what happens. So outside, we see Veronica sitting in the car, and she's watching Jackie walk out with Rashard and get in the car. And she has this expression on her face like, this goddamn bitch. I can't believe I should have known. Of course she's doing this. Like, she has this look on her face. But when she find out that Jackie was in on this all along, you can read that expression as being like, I can't believe she did it. I didn't think she'd be able to do it. And she fucking managed it. God damn. She's good and he's an idiot. And Wallace, and I have to say, like, I thought for a second, I mean, I guess this works out, but that's awfully contrived, because Wallace gets let out of the closet. Jackie's already gone. We know that Veronica followed Jackie right away and just left Wallace there, which I was blown away that she would do that, and was like, really? You're just going to drive after them? Like, I think that's honestly the right move here, but I also think that just bailing and not letting Morgan or Wallace know where you're going is kind of a dick move, but okay. And then when Rashard's uncle comes out, Wallace says something like, I know he left with my friend, and his uncle gets real pissed because he specifically said that Rashard is not supposed to leave this party. He is supposed to stay here where everything is like supervised and they can make sure of who's coming and going. And Jackie had to sort of bait Rashard into leaving at all. So then the uncle is very, like, he's on the warpath, like, where did he go? And Wallace says, you know what? This should be fun. I know a place she likes to go. And this is something that, at the time, I was kind of like, all right, show, it's very convenient that Veronica is gone, that he has no ride, but that he just stumbles into a ride. Because when he said, I know a place she likes to go, initially, it took me a second to realize that he was going to ride with him. I didn't know that's what was going to happen. But it turns out that the club that Veronica told Jackie to bring Rashard to is a club that a friend of hers from the police station works at and offered to get her into, even though she's underage. And he agreed to help her out because there's a metal detector to get in, by grabbing up the uncle's cell phone and handing it over to her. Which I can only imagine the scene that he caused when he realized his phone was gone. Because she keeps it until the next day. Like, I don't know if they ever give that shit back. I don't think so, right? Because, like, at the end of the episode, Wallace is on it. And I assume that that's just gone forever. But they get their hands on this phone, and she says that she is certain, when she hands it over to Wallace, that there are all kinds of numbers in this phone that will lead to the police being able to put pieces together of things that his uncle, the strings that he's been pulling to cover up for what Rashard did. And then we get the scene of the drive-through window dude from White Castle who's bouncing around in this obscenely huge hotel room. And Wallace's dad had called him earlier and been like, do you know that they're laying this at your feet? You dum-dum, this is why I told you not to say anything. But he is the one that comes in and gets this kid into custody and is like, we know that you saw that Wallace was not the one driving and you're coming with us. And I know that you got paid off and that's why you're here. And it ends there, and we're meant to sort of assume that this has all sort of worked out, but I can't help but think that there has to be another, like, piece of the puzzle that's going to wind up. Because she says, I read that article about the pep rally effect is when Veronica sees Wallace at the end of the episode. And he says, see, I told you everything would be good. And that's when he gets the call on that phone. And he says, hi, Monty, which I guess is the uncle's name. Yeah, I don't know how I got this thing. I just came across it. Sorry to hear about your legal troubles, but that can happen when you open your mouth. My advice, keep it shut, Uncle Ruckert. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got me a pep rally, and hangs up. And I'm just like, I really hope that actually works out, because he's being real arrogant and smug for somebody who, this shit is by no means over, my friend. Like, I hope it is, because I really don't want to see anything bad happen to Wallace. Like, but also, shit can happen, you know? I don't know. This kid could actually disappear like I had thought he was at first, the cashier. He could actually just vanish. But, so I'm hopeful, but I'm also worried, is what I'm saying. And then, really quickly, because I'm running out of time, there's the whole thing going on with Veronica's dad. He does this whole thing to distract Inga, I think is her name, so that he can get into the evidence locker and steal the tapes of the interviews of all of the people who were involved with the bus crash. And he starts to like put some things together and realize that the rat was probably only put in the bus in order to get anybody who could afford to take a different ride to do that. And he's realizing that him and Veronica assigned this a sort of symbolic significance, when in fact it was probably just a lot more practical. It was just, we wanted to make it reek in there. And that means that it's not that somebody was after Veronica, it's that somebody was after the poor kids, which is fucked up. And she rightly says, it's seemed weird to me that was all the poor kids that died, but like, who would want to do this on this sort of scale? Which I don't have an answer for that. And what's her face's dad had like specifically told her to not get on the bus, and we know that he's already out here trying to get Veronica's dad to agree to basically like redefining the borders of the town and gentrify everything. So that guy wanting to clear the place of fucking poor people sounds on brand, but doing it this way, I don't know what purpose it serves. And Veronica also shares with her father the tape that she has of him, what's his name, Jackie's dad, talking to the sheriff and getting blackmailed because he owes people a bunch of money. And I'm glad that she's finally shared that with him. She should have done that ages ago. But he winds up getting arrested in connection with this bus crash. And I don't know, like, it feels like the sheriff is trying to spin something here, but I don't see how they made that connection, really. I don't know what that even means. But, you know, I guess we'll find out. I feel bad for the guy because this is all going to come to light now. And Jackie is probably going to be going through it. But I don't like Jackie, so screw her, you know? What are you going to do? All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to Nancy for commissioning this episode. I'm sorry it has been such a long time since I covered the last one. But apparently we have a few lined up now, so that's good. And I am, like, nearing... We're what? Episode 12. How many episodes are there this season? Is there 20 again like there was before? Let me go and look, actually, and find the specific number. 22. So we're only a little over halfway through this season. So, yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen here, but I will be very interested. So, all right, guys, thank you all so much again, and I hope you're enjoying the show, and I will see you again soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers!
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.